Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community, we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors here. We're very happy that you've joined us, and we'd love to get to know more about you. If you haven't stopped by the newcomer table out there in Robinson Lounge, please do so after the service. We can get you any information that you'd like about our congregation and the many ministries that we have going on right now. Happenings in the back of your order of service has announcements about a lot of what's happening here at UU Princeton, including the bad news that the holiday cookie sale ends today. It's not an every week thing. I know, I wish it were an every week thing, but it's not. The good news is, though, that you can still get a plate of cookies today, and your purchase price goes to outreach grants. And so Women's Alliance coordinates. So all of that money will go to help groups that help women and children in the world. And also, our Women's Alliance cordially invites you to a potluck lunch and program this Thursday. The program is titled Winter Rituals with Meg Cox, who is right there. Meg will talk about everything from winter solstice to Christmas and New Year's, and she'll even give a primer on how to start your 2024 with a vision board. Bring a sandwich or salad to share for lunch and socializing in the Founders Room at noon, and then the program starts at 1. Our traditional holiday mimosas, did not know that was a thing, but might need to be there. And other cold drinks and hot drinks, as well as desserts, will be provided. Again, that's this Thursday. Super fun to join the Women's Alliance for their monthly luncheons. Also, from our Racial Justice Ministry, we're planning a congregational book read coming up in January and February. The book is titled Dismantling the Racism Machine by Karen Gaffney. It starts on January 14th with a workshop led by the author of that book. And then there'll be weekly small group discussions on Zoom. Please sign up today in Robinson Lounge after the service. And the UU Princeton t-shirts are in, and they're awesome. You can pick one up for $15 after the service in Robinson Lounge today. A huge thank you to our promotions team, and especially Ray Nichols, for making the t-shirts happen. And we have a new update that more sizes are coming, some smaller and some larger than what we currently have. There'll be more details available at the table after the worship service. And lastly, the Spring Sale Committee asks that this holiday you consider holding on to and donating any unwanted gifts to our Spring Sale, which is scheduled for May 3rd and 4th, 2024. The Spring Sale, if you're new, is this giant indoor-outdoor yard sale. It's humongous, and we raise a lot of money, and then we give it all away as community grants to local organizations. Last year, we broke a record and raised over $30,000 at the Spring Sale. Yes. And the event is so colossal that we really do start recruiting for this very, very early. So you might be asked to help make that happen pretty soon coming up, even though the sale itself isn't until May. And now, friends, with the holiday glow leading us, the call of peace guiding us, the zeal of children lifting us, and the warmth of community holding us, come, let us worship together.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Our meditation comes from the pen of Howard Thurman. I invite you to enter into the space of quietude and meditation. I will light candles this season, candles of joy despite all sadness, candles of hope where despair keeps watch, candles of courage for fears ever present, candles of peace for tempest-tossed days, candles of grace to ease heavy burdens, candles of love to inspire all my living, candles that will burn all year long. And here in the silence of this sacred space, we offer these, the prayers and meditations of our hearts. May it be so, and amen.
Good morning. I grew up in the South Nassau Unitarian Universalist Congregation, or SNUC, in my hometown of Freeport, Long Island. And I went straight through RE in the youth group. Many of our friends went to that church, and I grew up treating that church like a second home, which meant that I ran around like a wild thing after RE. I think my kids have the same feeling about UUCP. But while I learned a lot about world religions, I also learned about sex in an early version of Al. I didn't really learn about the chalice. I remember there was a mural in front of the church that was a very sort of modern metal thing that was a chalice, but I never put it together. There was a circle around it with all the different religions. And so what I got from that and from my RE was that Unitarianism was a little bit of each, and that was my explanation of what it was to be a UU. What I really got from my education about the 7 principles, which I also did not somehow take in my RE classes, was from my mom. My mom, both my parents were involved in Unitarianism. My dad was on the board, but my mom was very active in social justice, and she really embodied our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every people and of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So when I think of the light of that chalice, I think of it lighting up the world in these dark times. You know, it's sometimes I lose hope when I see the mass shootings every day, the war in the Middle East, and the ongoing effort to destroy democracy. But I think about the light that shone from my mother's face and how she believed in all these causes, starting with the 1960s and going right up to a few years ago. I've always taken great pride in the fact that my mom marched with Martin Luther King in the famous March on Washington. And she said she was so far back, she really didn't hear anything. So sadly, but she said it was very exciting. And she was, she with another white volunteer helped, would go into houses and pretend to buy houses on Long Island. And then they would send in a Black couple to see if they would sell to them. And it became this big effort to desegregate housing on Long Island. So she was an activist all her life. And really up until a few years ago, she went to the Women's March with me and some of my friends. My mom sadly has dementia now, so I can't kind of recover some of those memories, but I was thinking about her and I realized that I think we also, and this was something that I think a lot of these things came from her involvement with the UU Church on Long Island. I think we also housed freedom riders, because I remember seeing, having these young people come with their sleeping bags and their backpacks and sleep in our living room. And then they would come up, they would have breakfast and they would go off. And I think my mother would probably wanted to join them, but she had 4 kids, so she wasn't able to do that. When I think about my involvement here, I'm so happy that my kids were able to get that sense of social, involvement too, from stacking shelves in the food pantry to serving people at St. Mary's. And I think what they got from that wasn't just like, we should help people, but also like, it's a joy to help people. It does something for you personally to do it. And for me, there's been so many things that I've gotten that I feel like were that light of, brought me that light of social justice. And among them was that I was in the Beloved Conversations years ago. And at this point, I was living in Princeton, and I kind of had the feeling like racism is kind of ancient history. We're over that. There are places, but probably not here in my beloved Princeton, that this exists. And that due to Ted Fetter and others, I feel like it kind of opened up my mind to the idea that it exists everywhere and it exists in us, sadly. And we have to kind of start with ourselves to try and combat racism. And that got me involved through TED also, in Not in Our Town, Princeton, which is another group that UU helped found. So that's been very meaningful to me. And I've also been so happy to see our church get involved with with our refugee family, and I was happy to help raise money for that. And I think of people like Michelle Oxner and others who are working on that every day. And I could never hope to live up to that, just as I could never hope to live up to my mother's example. But I still think that it's a joy to be part of a community of like-minded people who are doing this work to try and make a difference and to find that light of the chalice. And to me, it's that light shines darkness in the world. It's not always there, but we can keep moving towards it anyway. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to start this worship associate reflection with a confession that I'm pretty bad at worship. I grew up in a very devout atheist household, if you can put it that way. My parents were very antagonistic towards religion, that the more religion in the world, the worse the world was. And so when I started coming here, it's been really uncomfortable for me to like sit in a pew or something. And, it just doesn't come natural to me. I don't pray. I don't meditate. When someone up here talks about the silence of the sacred space, I get super fidgety and uncomfortable. It's just, that's just who I am. However, I do have a begrudging confession to also make that I believe just a little bit of something spiritual is starting to kind of work its way into my heart a little. I don't know what it is, where it comes from. I don't know if it's like Bill's Jedi mind tricks or something, but it's something. I don't know. To me, it's not God, it's not the force. It's not even like, like the trees talking to me outside. It's, for me, the spirit is anytime I'm reminded to let my ego go and that my problems aren't the worst problems in the world. And that, every time I'm inspired to center my thoughts and my actions and feelings and words, centering those on love, like to me, that's my spiritual moment. I feel like I have a little candle in my heart, like a little spirit candle. Sometimes it's lit and I'm connected to the interconnected web of all things of which we are a part. And sometimes I'm hungry and like brunch isn't here and I wanted it and the candle just blows out and I'm stuck in my own ego again for the rest of the week. But what I can do is I can bring my little spirit candle and I can come to the chalice and I can relight my little candle once a week when I can make it. And to me, when somebody up here has to come every day and light the chalice for us. So for me, the chalice is, it's a reminder that we have to keep doing something to keep that connection alive. Like, it's not going to stay lit. It's not a propane tank. It's a little candle. And I know for me, sometimes when I come in here, it's now been close to 10 years that my family's been coming. And so I've been starting to actually crave the feeling of having my little candle lit every week. So it makes me want to come back here. And some weeks, like my candle is lit and it's strong and it's bright and the wind is blowing and the candle's still lit. And other times the slightest little breeze will just blow it out and I'm out. But I know I can come back and I know I can relight my candle. I feel like I'm trying to get better at the whole worship thing. And that's part of the reason I'm trying to do this. And so maybe I'm a little closer to the candle than I have been. And so when I light my candle this week, maybe it'll be a little brighter this week. It'll be a little stronger this week. And, but what I know for a fact is the candle will go out. I will get stuck in my own problems. I will be worrying about all my needs and I'll forget about service. But that's my responsibility as a UU is I need to come back and I need to keep lighting my little candle. So I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm a human being, but I know I have somewhere to go where I can continue to keep lighting my candle. Thanks.
And with that, we welcome Jean DeVoe and John Burton to the Worship Associates. I'm really grateful to Jean and John and Courtney, who you'll hear from in a moment, for bringing such a team approach. The Glow of the Chalice is a little different for all of us, and so it's good to have a team approach to the service today. Thank you all for being a part of that this morning.
I find this time of year difficult. I've mentioned before that I suffer from depression, and it becomes worse during the fall and winter when daylight hours are fewer and the weather grows colder and bleaker. I'm also not a huge fan of the holidays. There's so much pressure to be cheerful and merry and ho ho ho. Sure, eggnog helps, but one can only drink so much eggnog. I manage to pull it together for Christmas and sometimes even New Year, but I'm one of those people that definitely has a January slump. Every year I try something different. There's been dry January, no alcohol. The January, no meat. And Jimuary, you can guess what that one means. There's that pesky New Year's challenge on my meditation app, and then the challenge that comes every year, the challenge from the voice in my head that tells me this is my year. This is the year I overcome my depression and find happiness. This is the year I overcome my fear of living a life half lived on account of mental illness. You know what? This year is going to be different. You know why? Because I'm finally starting to accept myself for who I am. You know what's helping me to do that? Finding the good in other people is making me realize I can't really be all that bad myself. You know how I remember to do that? Well, there are a lot of ways. One is using that aforementioned meditation app for good rather than evil. I used to torture myself with that thing, using it as yet another tool to feed my perfectionism. I would get so annoyed with myself if I couldn't just breathe or focus. I've recently been leaning more toward the guided meditations that are about compassion and gratitude. In doing this, I'm able to wake up most mornings and remind myself of the things I'm grateful for and the people I care about. Another thing I'm doing to help me realize that, hey, I'm a pretty okay chick after all, is to do things to take care of myself physically. I've been running more consistently and have started following the Mediterranean way of eating more closely. I'm putting on nicer clothes more often. Funny story, I was once at Wegmans in my track pants, a Princeton sweatshirt, and a woolly hat, and someone in this very congregation, who shall remain unnamed, failed to recognize me, Ted Fetter, failed to recognize me because I looked so radically different than I do when I get dressed for church. Reverend Bill has also caught me at my worst at Target. I think twice, actually. That says a lot about us going to Target. Okay, so rather than just dressing nicely for Sunday mornings, I've started dressing nicely most of the time. Oh, and I started using a desktop light box. As someone who spends way too much time at my desk, having the light box is a godsend. Need a last-minute gift for someone you love? Light box, people, light box. I think they're good for depressed and non-depressed humans alike when there's so little sunlight. Outward light is fantastic, but the most important thing for my well-being is always, always looking for the light in others. I really do believe that everyone has light in them. I'd be lying if I said it's always easy to find. Some people make it super difficult for me to find their light, like that guy in the PetSmart parking lot that stole a parking spot right out from under me. I had my blinker on, man. But thankfully, they are few and far between. So this is what the light of the chalice means to me. It's the light in you. It's the light in me. It's the light in everyone. It's the light out of my own personal darkness, a darkness that's getting easier and easier to ignore.
Shortly after the German invasion of Poland, which would begin World War II, the great British American poet W.H. Auden put pen to paper. He was visiting his lover in New Jersey, of all places, when he put the final touches on the poem, which described and foresaw the violent history and violent future that was promised upon the continent and the world. He captured this sense in his piece titled September 1st, 1939, which is too long to read in its entirety, but the first and penultimate stanzas are, I sit in one of the dives on 52nd Street, uncertain and afraid as the clever hopes expire of a low, dishonest decade. Waves of anger and fear circulate over the bright and darkened lands of the earth, obsessing our private lives. The unmentionable odor of death offends the September night. And later he would write, all I have is a voice to undo the folded lie, the romantic lie in the brain of the sensual man in the street, and the lie of authority, whose buildings grope the sky. There is no such thing as the state, and no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizen or the police. We must love one another or die. Again, written as World War II began. We'll come back to another stanza in a few, but after the poem was published, he changed that final line from we must love one another or die to we must love one another and die, for death closes all, as Tennyson put it. Love, though, is about how we live, and especially in the face of coming horrors, which follow from earlier ones, Auden wrote that love was a must. It would become the most popular line in the poem, and that poem would become very well read, even though he actually didn't care for it very much. He would eventually call it trash, making clear the obvious truth of the sentiment, one's trash is another's treasure. It reached into popular culture with President Johnson even using that love line in a campaign ad. This is pure speculation, but watching his masterpiece be used to elect a politician may have made him dislike the poem even a bit more. But nonetheless, his initial response to the coming of World War II is what I'm getting at, not so much of what he thought about the work later on. He voiced clarity, resistance, and the value of love, though who knew if it would have any impact at all on the world. Unitarians in Europe in World War II did the same thing with the development of the flaming chalice as a symbol of our faith. A Unitarian named Charles Joy was processing political refugees in Portugal, helping people at risk from the Nazis find safety. And he found that the travel papers that he was more or less inventing for them, which bore the name of the Unitarian Service Committee, needed a seal to look more official. And so he commissioned an artist named Hans Deutsch to make such an image, such a seal. Deutsch went with a drinking vessel, a chalice, and a flame, probably because it looked kind of old and holy. It seemed like something that might have sacred oil in it too. It whiffed of ceremony and authority. It was kind of Greek, kind of Roman, kind of Jewish, kind of Christian, though in reality, it was a subversive creation intended to lead as many people to safety as possible. The seal would be stamped on papers that certified that its holders were moral and sound. It should be granted safe passage away from danger, whether he knew them or not. Joy even wrote to the Boston headquarters of the Unitarian Service Committee. He said, it may amuse you a bit to know that we are now issuing navicerts to pass emigrants to the New World through the British blockade. We are certifying that they are politically safe and sound. Did he know they were politically safe and sound? Probably not, but they needed safety, and the flaming chalice helped lead them there. And so when we light a chalice, always, but especially during times of greater war and violence and conflict, we are reminding ourselves that the chalice is subversive, it is creative, and seeks to rehumanize a world that has been dehumanized. It is a response to the evil of war and violence. It reminds the world of freedom from oppression. And because it echoes of ancient faiths but is a new creation, each lighting reminds us that we do this today just as others did this before us. It is our faith to spark freedom and safety, to remind the world of love, and to commit ourselves to its calling during our days. For as Auden traveled in the editing of his own piece, we will not love or die. We will love and die. And if we do that right, we'll leave lights of love that last long beyond our days.
And though wars may still come, they did for Auden, and though violence will still have its voice, it does today, we will know that our lives bear hope and love, even when, especially when, despair grips the heart and the lands. For the Chalice, just as it led refugees to freedom, so too leads our hearts to freedom from fear, from despair, from hatred. The chalice lit in the heart may be the most important chalice you can light, for its glow will soothe the weary, feed the hungry, and care for the sick around you. Auden teaches us this in his final stanza, which reads, "Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of arrows and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame." Let us kindle our affirming flame within and continue to light it together and share it with the world, that our faith may serve the sacred, the good, and the dreams of peace that fill every holy heart. May it be so, and amen.
So we'll see you in a week, if not before, 10:30, the All Ages Pageant service.
Carols, lots of fun. 7 o'clock, the evening service, lessons and carols. Come to both of them. They'll both be wonderful. And at the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light carries us until we gather again. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit guiding you toward lives of love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with everyone else by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.